so much for your patience doing things virtually. You know, it's a progress, not perfection. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to JW, and he's going to take over from there. Go ahead, JW. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jay. I'm codependent. Hi, Jay. Thank you very much for that introduction. Thank you very much for your service, Mauricio, and to anyone else who might be of service that I haven't seen yet. This is a partnership with a higher power, and today we're going to be discussing steps 2 and 7, and some thoughts on renewing some relationships. In the chat, oh, maybe not in the chat, let's find out. Yes, in the chat, I am posting a link to a Google document. If you have Google, you can make a copy of that and fill it out digitally. You can also just use it to follow along and write in a journal. So without too much further ado, I think we will see about sharing a screen. All right. Okay, partnership with a higher power. My name is Jay, I'm codependent. And I've realized I've forgotten a thing. Pardon me one moment. Great, I fixed it. Hello, I'm Jay and I'm codependent. And this is Partnership with a Higher Power. I wanted to start with just a little bit of my experience, strength, and hope. I am very, very happy that I came into Codependence Anonymous. CoDA was my first program, and I learned a lot about who I am and what I'm looking for, and how very dysfunctional my life had been. And I continue to find ways that my life remains dysfunctional. And the 12 steps gives me a tool, a very powerful tool to recognize those areas, give that a lot of thought, and make some changes. And for me, the most powerful part of that is a relationship with a higher power. When I came into this program, I didn't have much of a relationship with a higher power. If you'd have asked me at this time, I would have told you I did not, in fact, have a relationship with a higher power. And a lot of that came from my upbringing. I, as a person who experienced the American education system, saw a lot of lessons about how religion had been misused throughout history in order to do some pretty terrible things. And in my household, my parents decided that they were not going to even address the issue of higher power, saying only that, you know, when I feel like it's time for me to do that exploration, I was free to do so. So with those two very powerful things in mind, I had kind of written off a higher power. But working this program helped me to see that there is a very positive higher power available to me. And to get to it, I just have to strip away all my old ideas that I had falsely attributed to higher power. And I'm probably going to talk about that a little bit more. Today, I have a very strong relationship with my higher power, and I feel that it's becoming stronger and stronger on a daily basis, sometimes a minute-to-minute basis. So with that in mind, let us begin. I'm a proponent of using the text Codependence Anonymous for working steps. And so that's kind of the tack I'm going to take today. And in doing a strong step 2, I like to go to step 2, paragraph 7, which reads, in our childhood, our higher power may have had personality traits similar to authority figures. At times, God may still resemble a punishing or shaming person, like a tyrannical spiritual leader, a family member, or friend. We find it helpful to list the personality characteristics and traits of a higher power with whom we do have or would like to have a relationship. This can help us determine if we have transferred personality traits and characteristics or present abusers to our higher power. To better understand these concepts, we talk with others in CoDA and learn from their experiences. And it's a beautiful passage. And I've been in a lot of meetings where the format is, let's read a step or let's read a paragraph and talk about it a little bit. But I rarely hear about this paragraph, how strong a format it produces. And if you're looking at the worksheet, which I will drop in the chat once again, just in case anybody's new, we can see, oh no, I can't make it go away. There we go. We can see that this paragraph actually has 4 things that it's asking us to do. It asks us to list personality traits of our childhood authorities. It asks us to, it hints at really, but it asks us to list personality traits of current authorities that we're currently struggling with. Then it asks us to list the personality traits of a higher power with whom we would like to have a relationship. And for that, I tell people, dream big. The beauty of a higher power is it is a higher power, so it can do things that a human being can't do. And last, it suggests that we reach out to other codependents and ask them about their higher powers. And so in each of these boxes, we can list those traits and we can realize that, as I did, a lot of the traits of my higher power were put there by my teachers and my parents. They told me that higher power was dangerous, that my higher power wasn't important enough to have a relationship with. And I got to remove those ideas and add new ideas to my working life, my program working life, and create a higher power of my own understanding that works for me. I've heard it said that this is not just a new higher power, but it's a new higher power that works. And that is certainly true for me. Now, this is not officially the focus of this workshop, but if you have not done this work and find it interesting, I hope that you will take what you like and leave the rest, and perhaps consider working with these ideas. But for now, I'm going to move right along. This summer, in July, I was attempting to go to 20 meetings in 10 days. And I was very proud of myself when I went back and looked at all the meetings I had gone to and realized I had actually made it to 25 meetings in 10 days. Now, I'm very lucky that I had enough time off to be able to do that. But because it was July, a lot of meetings were focusing on step 7. And I was in a meeting, and all of a sudden this paragraph jumped out at me, and specifically a very specific sentence. Now, I've read this paragraph many times, easily 10 in the past, and I had never had any sort of thing jump out at me. But for some reason in July this year, this jumped out at me. In step 7, paragraph 6 says, in completing step 7, we allow our higher power to guide our lives and the healing of our codependent behaviors. We begin to understand that our recovery can continue only through our higher power's love and care. We no longer play God or place others in that role. We become partners with our higher power. We ask for God's help as we apply healthy new behaviors in our relationships with God, ourselves, and others. And the line, we become partners with our higher power, reached out at me. And I said, wait, really? Partners? Interesting. And I think this especially jumped out at me because I had just read Promise 6. Promise 6 says, I learned to see myself as equal to others. Our new and renewed relationships are all with equal partners. And so if we become partners with our higher power, and if our new and renewed relationships are all with equal partners, and my step 2 work renews my relationship with my higher power, then that's a renewed relationship. And if all my renewed relationships are with equal partners, then I'm supposed to be equal partners with higher power? How? How does that work? And luckily, I have tools to use when something jumps out at me that I struggle with. So, pardon me just a moment while I check to make sure that you have what I have. You do not. So now it's time for me to share handout number 2. So I have a problem. I am looking at these sections and I find myself a little bit resistant to an idea. So what can I do? Well, luckily, Codependence Anonymous suggests a new order for my relationship. It suggests that I place God first, then myself, and then other people. So if I have a question, this can be the order in which I ask entities this question. So I'm going to ask a question of God. I'm going to pray and I'm going to meditate. I'm going to pray to talk to my higher power, and I'm going to meditate to hear the responses. Then I'm going to ask myself. Because there aren't any questions, to my knowledge, in the book about this, I get to make up my own questions. And I write those down. And then once I've got questions, I can start answering my own questions in my journal. And at some point, I run out of things that I have ideas on. And perhaps my journaling is mostly, this is crazy talk. Why am I even asking myself this question? But sometimes the journaling is, well, if it was going to be that way, then I guess it could be like this or like that. But from my experience, it's usually a little of both columns. Once I've done my own journaling, once I've got in touch with myself, now I can reach out to other people. And that helps me with knowing what to take and what to leave from the phrase, take what you like and leave the rest. And for me, my magic number is at least 5 reach out calls. Different people have different numbers. And to those people, I say, good for you. I call this the research phase. All these things are areas in which I'm finding out answers. And when I'm done with that, I get to report. First, I'm going to report to God. I'm going to pray and I'm going to meditate again. And I'm going to talk about, hey, this is what I found out. And maybe the report is, and I'm still confused. And in that case, I might go back to the research phase. I might journal again because I've got more information from other people, but I've got some questions about the things they said that I want to find out for myself. Perhaps I want to make some more reach out calls. Maybe I feel like there's more to be gained from contacting more people. But at some point I decide, I have a pretty good answer. And so I go to my journal to reflect and kind of sum up what I've discovered. And then I get to go to other people. I share with a sponsor. My sponsor is not always immediately available, but very open to making a date, a time to converse. And then maybe my sponsor says, I think there are some more questions to consider, and I might go back to the research phase, or my sponsor might say, wow, that's amazing. I hope that you'll share that in your meetings. Okay. As I go into a process of investigation, I find that the third step prayer is an excellent prayer. I realized relatively recently that the third step prayer is very much phrased the way it is because we know we're about to go into a fourth step process. And I realized that this work of investigating my relationship with my higher power ultimately was akin to a fourth step. The third step prayer says, God, I give to you all that I am and all that I will be for your healing and direction. And for me, this was important because I'm having this doubt about whether my relationship can be a certain way. I have this doubt about whether this investigation is going to be useful, and I can let go of all that and know that my higher power will guide me to something new. And that's my higher power's healing and direction. It says, make new this day as I release all my worries and fears, knowing that you are by my side. Please help me to open myself to your love, to allow your love to heal my wounds, and to allow your love to flow through me and from me to those around me. So for me, I have this question. I'm opening myself to the idea that I don't know everything, which can be very difficult for me as a codependent. And I'm about to allow my higher power's love I'm about to allow it to heal my wounds. And because I have yet to be on a mountaintop and speak directly to me, it often comes through inspiration, or it comes from other people saying things that spark something in my mind. And that comes in when I'm making my reach out calls. That comes when I'm doing my journaling. And it comes when I'm doing my prayer and meditation. And then that love can flow through me and from me to those around me when I report, when I talk to my sponsor, when I share in meetings. And then it ends, may your will be done this day and always. Amen. And that reminds me that I want to be open to ideas outside of myself. So next I go into question asking. And there are a lot of questions on this worksheet. Such questions as, what is my definition of a partnership? And it's so easy for me to go to a dictionary or even a series of dictionaries to get a bunch of different definitions of partnership. As a former honors student, as a codependent, I want to get the answers correct, and I want to get the answers correct immediately. And my old behavior is to go to other people. But because I'm going to God first, I'm going to pray about the question. And then I'm going to myself next, which means I'm writing my own definition of partnership today. And I'm being very honest with myself so that I can see what I truly think. And then when I go to other people, in this case, perhaps Miriam and or Webster, I might discover that my definition is very different from the culture's definition. And I might think to myself, how do I feel about that? I might decide that the culture is wrong or has a different idea. I ask myself, what is my definition of partnership? And I ask myself, is this different from an equal partnership? And if it is different, how is it different? I ask myself, can I be an equal partner with a person who is significantly more experienced than I? And if so, how? And when I journaled that question, it opened up a big old can of worms because in my childhood, I felt like so many other people, most of the other people on the planet had significantly more experience, significantly more authority. And my initial thought was, I could not be an equal partner. So for that, I created a little chart. This is very similar to the first two boxes in the chart in the first handout, but it goes into a little bit more depth. On the left-hand side, we've got a relationship with a person, and everybody has different important people in their lives, so feel free to adjust. But primary caregivers, teachers, perhaps some kind of spiritual or religious authority, perhaps a professional. Could I possibly have an equal relationship with my dentist, for example? So I've thrown a couple of questions that came up for me, but there are so many other questions that could be asked. The right-hand column, I decided to put on my imagination hat and ask myself, what would an equal relationship have looked like if I had had an equal relationship with each of these childhood authorities? What could it have looked like? And again, this can be fairy dust. There were more questions. What have I learned about equal partnership from my sponsorship, or in your case, co-sponsorship, step study group, etc.? I happen to use a sponsor, but there are other options. What have I learned about equal partnership from those relationships? And maybe I discover something through this process that later I decide I want to bring up and apply to my other relationships. What have I learned about equal partnership from my recovery friends, from my new and renewed relationships with people not in program or not in this program? And maybe I get something from doing this work that I can apply to those relationships to make them stronger. I also look at the traditions, try and find questions from there. For example, tradition 1 says our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon CoDA unity. So in that case, if I have a partnership with my higher power, what might common welfare look like? In order to know that, I might think, what does my higher power want? What does my higher power need? How can I bring those things to the relationship or to the world on behalf of my higher power? And if it's a partnership, I get to have wants and needs. And so what do I want and need from this partnership with a higher power? How can I make space for my higher power to bring those things to the relationship, to the world for me to experience? This is tradition 8, which says that sometimes there are things we can't do, and in those cases we get in touch with a special worker. And so can I envision higher power as a special worker? Is higher power a special worker? And I wanted to explore both answers. If higher power is a special worker, here's why, and here are some of the consequences of thinking of higher power in that way. But also, you know what? Higher power is not a special worker. And here's why. And here are some consequences of that thinking. And again, as I discover my own answers, I get to explore which of those things that came up as a result I want to keep, and which ones I want to leave. Some of them will resonate and some of them will not. Now, just in case people haven't gotten the list, I'm sorry, the handout, here comes handout number 1. Thank you, Mauricio. And I've just linked handout number 2 again, and so has Mauricio. And right now, what I was hoping is that we could take 15 minutes.
All time.
I'm sorry, let me do the math again. Let's make it 10 minutes. There are far too many questions here to be able to answer all of the questions. But if we were to take 10 minutes to find a question that particularly resonates with each of us individually, and perhaps answer it in a journal or in a document, that would be wonderful. And then perhaps we can either share as a large group, or this might be preferable to give more people time to share. We can break into breakout groups. Is that an option?
Breakout rooms are an option.
Wonderful. So yeah, thank you for offering time, Sharon. If you could set the timer for 10 minutes, that would be much appreciated. And if anybody has any questions, you can put them in the chat, but hopefully all the questions are there in the worksheet.
JW, I think that's our limit there. If you want to move on to the next part of your.
Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who shared. This is my first time running this workshop, so there might be more time at the end, or I might run over. So we'll see how things fall. Thank you so much for the shares. I wrestled personally with the special worker part, and I really appreciate what I heard today, because I'm still continuing to learn about this topic. I wanted to share briefly about some of the things that came up for me in doing this process. Most importantly, doing this process helped me completely reframe my understanding of what was possible in a parent-child relationship. When I looked back at, what was my relationship with my parents like in terms of a partnership, it wasn't a partnership. It was a dictatorship. So there was at least a ship involved, but I was the one being dictated at. And, some of the things were helpful. Don't touch that stove, it's hot. That can be positive. But other things were very much things that my parents had their own idea as a result of their own upbringing in society of what things I needed to do and what things I needed to not do in order to fit in order to be accepted. Which ultimately boils down to, they taught me that I needed to change myself to be okay. I remember a time where I was standing and, watching my dad do something, woodworking or car mechanic kind of stuff. And my dad looked at the way I was standing and said, "Don't hold your hand on your hip that way. Turn it around. Boys do it this way, girls do it this way." And I look back on that today and I'm like, well, how about humans do it the way that's comfortable for them individually, based on their musculoskeletal configuration? They'd say things to me like, don't run, don't be loud. And, it might have been coming from a good place. We got to acculturate this young person so that they will be able to sit still in school or whatever. But that put a big damper on me expressing the feelings that were in me, the exuberance I had for life. And I would argue that tamping down that exuberance is its own harm. So that made a big difference, because then I got to think about, like, how could that parenting be different? And one of the things that I like to apply into my recovery is curiosity. Instead of coming to a relationship with another person where I tell them who they need to be, I come to a relationship with a person trying to figure out, who are you? What can I learn from the way you do things? Instead of coming with my own ideas of what is right and wrong based on my own ideas of what is safe for me, what has been safe. And in that way, I can be on the edge of uncomfortableness and find out that there are truly areas that I can be comfortable in that I hadn't considered. With parenting, you know, I want to teach language. I want to teach, you know, let's reflect on what has happened, and is this what we want to bring forward? So self-reflection, but not necessarily dictate what is right and wrong. You know, we all grow into an idea of what is right and wrong based on our past experiences. And so sheltering another person from those experiences can actually stunt the knowledge that they need to become the moral people that they will ultimately flower into. I also got a lot out of thinking about special workers. How can I be in an equal partnership with my dentist? Now, I definitely don't like having a tooth drilled, and I definitely don't want to do that myself. I definitely need an outside person to help me with that. I do not have the expertise of tooth drilling, and I definitely do not have expertise in self-tooth drilling. And so ultimately, my idea of how to be at the dentist was just be there and shut up. But it occurred to me that, you know, being in a partnership, I get to communicate my experience to the dentist. If something is uncomfortable, I can, in advance, come up with a hand signal. Hey, whoa, that's a lot of pain. Does it need to be done that way? You know, and give feedback in that way. Now, sometimes the pain is necessary and there's no way around it. But sometimes by communicating that, a new method can be arrived at. I also have my part of deep breathing and mindfulness to avoid squirming. I can focus on, yeah, my jaw hurts, but I need to keep my jaw open. The dentist can't do that for me. The dentist can put stuff in my mouth to stop me from closing it, but that puts more things in my mouth. It makes it a denser forest of objects. Hopefully that metaphor made sense. So even there's opportunities for me to bring something to the relationship. And so what really came up for me in this work is understanding that when I go to a special worker, that special worker has expertise that I don't have. And my old belief was that I'm just, you know, another random body that a doctor or a dentist is going to need to do something to. But instead, I have my own expertise. I have the most vital expertise. I am an expert in me. I know what I'm feeling. I know what I'm thinking. I know what my relationships are. And I can communicate those things to other people. By being self-reflective, I get to know more and more. I get to do the research into myself so that I can communicate that expertise to another person, whether they are a special worker or a person I'm in relationship with. And that expertise is, I realized, a thing that this program is about. Throughout my childhood, I was an expert in being who other people wanted me to be, but as a result of program, I now get to be an expert in being me and shedding all those old thoughts and behaviors and becoming the most me I can be. So yeah, I think I need to pace myself and continue, even though there is plenty more that could be shared here. I wanted to talk about the next section on handout number 2. Handout number 2 is basically that same quote from the beginning, from step 7. Again, it says, in completing step 7, we allow our higher power to guide our lives and the healing of our codependent behaviors. We begin to understand that our recovery can continue only through our higher power's love and care. We no longer play God or place others in that role. We become partners with our higher power. We ask for God's help as we apply healthy new behaviors in our relationships with God, ourselves, and others. And then it continues. Though we may behave in some of the same codependent ways, we become convinced, regardless of the timing and ways, that God will continue to remove these shortcomings. We ask God to remove them as they happen and seek additional help when necessary. We must try to be consistent in our readiness and our willingness. In doing so, our maturing, healthier selves will continue to emerge. And I feel like these 2 paragraphs answer the question, what is my part in this partnership? What is higher power's part in this partnership? And so it tells us that our higher power is going to guide our lives in healing. I need to allow my higher power to do that. It tells us that I need to stop playing God, and I need to stop placing other people in that role. It tells me I get to ask for God's help, and that implies that God is going to help me. And if I don't believe that God can or will help me, I get to ask myself why and try to get myself into a place where I believe that that is not just possible, but a thing that God wants to do. It tells me to apply my new healthy behaviors in relationships with God and myself and other people. It tells me that God's going to remove shortcomings. It tells me that I get to ask God to remove those shortcomings as they happen and seek additional help. And that God will remove them when it's time, and that I get to be consistent in my readiness and willingness. And that's a moment-to-moment situation. And higher power is going to provide that help. Sometimes I need a special worker, like a therapist, and higher power is going to bring me to a person who can help, maybe in the short term, maybe for a reason, maybe in the slightly longer time, a season, maybe in the very long time. So, some final thoughts. It's important to remember that the sentence in Tradition 6, the first part of the sentence says, my new and renewed relationships are all with equal partners. That's the second half, but the first half talks about my relationship with others. So if this equal relationship thing with a higher power isn't feeling right for you right now, that's okay. The sentence kind of seems to imply maybe this is just people, but if it is working for you, I'd like to say that for me, it's working very much, that I get to try and find my equal part in this partnership with higher power. And whichever way it goes, look at all the things I can uncover by asking myself these questions and acting as if it's true. I can recover from the tiniest of abuses by treating them as abuses. Would anybody agree that my dad telling me to stand a certain way is abuse? I don't know. But it was an instance where I was being me, and I was being told that being me was not okay in that specific way. But if I treat that as something I can recover from, then I can recover from it. Everyone on this planet has their own special expertises, because at the very least, they're an expert in being themselves. But also they have things that they enjoy. They have special skills and interests that I might not have. They have specialties and they have gifts. And so I get to celebrate those in other people. And that gives me permission to celebrate them in myself when I find out what they are. And it gives me the opportunity to come to a relationship with the idea of not how can I get what I need from another person, but what interesting gifts and specialities is this person bringing into the world? I must have faith in a higher power. The most important thing for me is understanding that as a little kid, my parents didn't have faith that I would be okay on my own as I am. They felt that I was not going to be whatever it was I needed to be, and so they needed to intervene. And to my way of thinking, that's a lack of faith. I already knew I needed to have faith in a higher power. It says that throughout the book. But what I'm realizing is that my higher power gives me what I can handle. My higher power is going to not bring me into situations that I can't handle. And so anything that I am experiencing, my higher power believes I can handle it. And I think that's faith. And the idea that my higher power might have faith in me is incredible. It's so empowering. And I hope that you will consider that idea as you move forward in your recovery. Now, just a quick little note to wrap up. Today we talked about this 2-pass theory of recovery, where we look into ourselves for research and then we report. I had already prayed and meditated. I had done my journal reflection, and I shared with sponsor back in July, and I started sharing in meetings in August. But today I'm so grateful, so blessed to be able to share this with you in a workshop. And I'd like to put into the universe that anybody can do this work. And if there's an area that you have done a lot of introspection in, I would like to say the words, your experience, your expertise is valuable. And I'd like to encourage you to consider in the future, perhaps going out on a limb and running a workshop or agreeing to a lead share and sharing what you've got with the rest of the fellowship, because we all grow from all of us sharing with each other. That is what I have to share today. I really appreciate everyone coming and your attentive faces. In a moment, when the recording ends, I assume we're recording, yes we are, I will put my email in the chat in case you have any questions.